It appears to be live. Do the usual test just to make sure everything's working okay. It appears to. It sounds like me, so we'll say it's working. All right, so because of one of these lousy, rotten, stinking commenters, we'll do some the single and double slit conversation. These are just both single slit experiments I did do on my porch today. So I am getting myself back in the do something kind of mode. And so this is the top one would be a very narrow slit, very, very, very extremely narrow. And the bottom one is the much wider one. And it was almost wide enough where I would have thought the pattern wouldn't exist, but no, it's lots of bars, maybe 100 of them, maybe. Anyway, so off to comments. One particularly crappy comment. So I have drawn this many times before. This is basically a way of describing it using height as intensity, but it wouldn't look exactly like this. But the idea is the double slit pattern has two patterns in it. And as I have honestly described many times before, it's essentially the envelope of the single slit, which would be this kind of pattern. The envelope argument is made that this is an envelope for the single slit. Whoops. And, they do this little bullshit like this. And obviously this intensity goes way up in terms of, because it's a single slit, obviously a lot of light goes right through the middle. And this middle section in the single slit is wider. Okay, this distance is bigger than in the double slit, which pretty much I think just represents the fact that the center would actually be nothing. There'd be no light here if if it wasn't for the fact that the light does go straight through the center, and it just wipes out what would be a dark spot here, and then there'd be a light spot on either side, and then dark spots. So it's just obliterated what would have been a dark spot. The two slits are creating an overlapping pattern essentially, and that overlap creates a bar and a bar with a dark spot in the middle. So the two slits are essentially creating a pattern that has a bar here and a bar here, and it's just the light going through the middle that creates this middle bit of light. So it has nothing to do with the experiment technically. So if you saw the experiment, the way the two slits would be creating it, if you just saw the light that goes next to the two slits, an argument could be made that the middle would be dark, not light. All right, anyways, but I've done all this stuff before. So I've pointed out that the two slit pattern is complex compared to the single slit. And this is a pattern that's not explained by their interference rules. So let's understand they're I won't attempt to draw it because I can't draw it. This pen just doesn't do these lines very well. But this idea, these little you drop two stones next to each other in a lake, and the two waves will eventually collide with each other, and they'll overlap in constructive and destructive ways. But there's no water correlate. There's no example where water waves interfere with each other in a manner that creates these two patterns. There's just the on-off thing that's supposed to be gradual, by the way, and it's not. But but that's what it's supposed to be creating, and there's no correlation in this idea of wave interference to this complex superposition of two patterns. Water doesn't do that. All right, so let's go to the crappy comments, and then I'll show some video maybe. It didn't make great video, but just tried some different things, and I have to try a little harder. I mean, I did, unfortunately, I have some nice green lasers, and these are little films I was using um, that have, like 35 millimeter. Geez, I mean, I hate the celluloid, plastic, and with a little slit cut in, as an image inside of it. So they're very precise, nice. And Steve Bro sent those. Um, and so, very good. But the problem is, my green laser melted one of them. So that was really irritating. But I have enough redundancy that I should be okay to do other experiments. But then I have to use the red laser, and it just doesn't make quite as nice a pattern. I have to, find a way to turn the lights out and do different things that will help, I think. But whatever. I have to work on some technical issues. So he says, so this is the Nino. No content on his channel, I'm sure. So let's go look at his channel just to see what kind of unaccountable scum. So 0 subscribers, no content, no reputation, no anything. Just a cunt. Ballless, weak, trolly nonsense. Just make your scummy accusations that you don't back up with anything called evidence, and have no reputation at stake. Nobody can just keep going to your channel and pointing out how you're a lying piece of scum shit, because that's what you are. Anyway, this is disgusting. No, you're disgusting. So it says 20 million videos. Obviously, it's not 20 million videos. It's 1,000 videos, and a small percentage of them, maybe 30 or 40, deal with the slit experiments and the subject of interference. And in those videos, I've shown honest representations of Google images of the single and the double slit, and explained why I don't find this evidence compelling that this experiment proves light photons are a wave. And you still won't admit. It's not about admitting what? You're not presenting facts. You're making declarations for which you don't have evidence. Admit the double slit pattern shows 2 sets of bars. So there's no argument that there's 2 sets of bars. It's not a rational accusation against me. It doesn't show 2 sets of bars. It shows bars in 2 patterns. The on-off pattern, and then it has another pattern built into the on-off pattern where it goes on and off and on and off collectively. But there's no 2-bar pattern. Idiot. Okay. Again, I've drawn it. So, I mean, again, keep arguing that somehow I don't admit something when I've drawn the images of it. I've drawn it and talked about it, and even pointed out how, well, where's your math explain this? Or where's, more precisely, where is your wave mechanic explanation? Where does some other wave behave this way? You say photons are waving. Well, how come they're not waving the way other waves wave? Okay. One small set from the single slit diffracting. So he calls it diffraction. So I've played Professor Lewin, an MIT professor. So this is more of my dishonesty, I guess, where he explicitly says it's stupid to say the single slit is diffraction. And let me show the single slit again, okay, just to highlight. These are both single slit images. Okay, I mean, this is not diffraction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's not diffraction, idiot. You can't create diffraction that has 25 bars per side, 50 bars. That's not diffraction, idiot. Yeah, it's some other mechanism that's causing it. You can't blame wave mechanic diffraction, because the wave mechanic diffraction would be so slight on the very edges. That's the only way you could ever create it, even with a single slit. So a single slit in water won't create any substantial interference, and so they call it diffraction because there's a little bit of diffraction on the fringes, the very extreme fringes. And obviously, if I throw a plain rock into a puddle, the rings created aren't interfering with themselves. There's no interference when I throw a single rock into a pond. There's no diffraction. Okay, so your argument about how this is about diffraction, how would diffraction be a different mechanism than wave interference? How do you diffract light exactly? I mean, do you have an explanation? Because we know that you can diffract water or something else because it's a, a medium that is in tension and that it slows down when it goes across surfaces because of the tension and the agitation. And that's why it slows down. It's not really diffraction. It's just bending because it's slowed down. Where's the light correlation to this word diffraction? So, I mean, that's just bullshit right there. One small set from the single slit diffracting. What single slit? In the there's no, in the double slit, there's two single slits, yes, but there's no evidence that any of them are doing anything called diffraction. All right, and a larger pattern. So now he calls it at least a pattern. So a encompassing second pattern, yes, where the single slit pattern fades in and out. So what he's really arguing is that's these little separations between the bars, where the bars don't exist for a little bit in here. So there's bars, and then there's a dead space, and then there's bars, and then there's a dead space. That's the unexplained phenomenon from even quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics isn't explaining that. You're not going to show me the wave tank that makes that. So why don't you explain your Huygens explanation for it, or your somebody else explanation for it? Because I don't think you have one. I haven't heard it yet. I haven't seen the explanation for that pattern from your side. So I don't know why you're arguing it with me. Your people should explain it first, right? You're the ones who are supposed to have all the answers. Why don't you have an answer for that? Why don't you show me the wave tank that does that? Oh, that's right, but you can't. Obviously. Little scum. Scummy little shit. Unaccountable, scummy shit. All right. So now he says, you do not see this with a single slit. Yes, there's no two patterns in the single slit, right? And when have I ever said otherwise? When have I ever described the single slit as having two patterns? Oh, that's right, never. No matter how you alter the setup, whatever that means, the slit width, the distance from the detector, and so on. And again, where have I asserted otherwise? Where have I asserted the two patterns are the same? And where have I asserted, quote me, quote the video where I said the two patterns are the same, and quote me where I said, in context, in the sense that obviously I've said things like, look, the two patterns are caused by the same thing because you can see there's such gross similarity between them. There's obviously gross similarity between the patterns. But obviously the single slit pattern itself has, insane amounts of difference. Look at all these. This is a single slit. This is just a single slit, and then the slit's twice as wide, and this is the what you get. They're both single slit patterns. Now, they don't exactly look very much like each other, right? But we know they're caused by the same thing. But look at the differences. I mean, there are curious differences. Look how round the center spot is as you make the slit bigger, which doesn't entirely make sense because it's not like the whole laser can get through it. We're talking about a slit that's still not much bigger than a hair. So it's not like the whole laser beam is being shown in that circle. So somehow it's making a circle out of light that isn't a circle. A little bar of light is getting through, and somehow it's gone circular. Do we have explanations for any of that? No, we don't. And here in the other case where the beam, the slit is even more narrow, we still have all this circular stuff. Now, none of that circular stuff is part of the mathematics. None of it's part of your theory of how this takes place. I mean, there's no theory for why it's doing that. why its shape changes. All right. I mean, it's just a fact. You don't have explanations for those things. All right. In fact, I mean, let's understand the context. The single slit in water provides no similarity to the function of electrons or photons going through slits. Not similar at all. The photons and electrons create pattern. The single slit in water creates no pattern. Just a fact. All right. In fact, if one slit in the single slit, so that makes a lot of sense, right? Yeah, the one slit in the single slit is narrow enough, close to matching the frequency of the source. Says you again. This, I don't think you can make a slit small enough, but regardless, you can make very small slits. It is smaller than a human hair. I mean, small. Then there is just a band of light. I've never seen just a band of light. I mean, when you make the slit small enough, the center maxima, where 90% of the light is there, and it's so weak, but have you seen a time exposure to prove that there's no light going to the other bands? I guess I'll do that experiment best I can. I'll certainly take a photograph outside of where I can see visually with my own eyes any pattern, and I'll see if the pattern's there, because just have to add the photons up. There just aren't enough per second for us to see them, but they're there. All right. So you're making an assertion that they're not there, when I would argue that no, they're there, you just can't see them. And this can be approximated quite nicely by taking the opening to be a single point source. Well, again, it's just absolute nonsense for you to think you can declare it a single point source, like a single photon comes out, when we know that's not what's happening. So you want to say you can make a slit small enough where a single photon comes out. Fine, let me see the experiment. I don't see any technical reason why that can't be done, but I don't think that's going to mean there's no pattern. So you can pretend there's no pattern, but I'm saying sure there'll be a pattern. The same pattern. There'll still be points where nothing goes to certain locations because of the way the electrons I'm saying they're hitting, the photons are hitting, are going to still create a pattern. It's just that it's going to be spread out much longer, as is demonstrated by the variable slit that I've shown multiple times, where the slit is varied in its distance and you can just see it spreading. And this can be approximated. Okay, so this idea of arbitrary definitions of a single point source, when we know that's not how photons work. This is the simplifying assumption. Well, again, it's a stupid, unnecessary assumption. Why bother with that? How exactly is converting the experiment into almost no light getting through at all a demonstration of the function of the experiment? I mean, I would argue that these images are more likely to glean information about what's happening than images where you've reduced the number of photons so low that you can't see them anymore. Seems more sensible to use images where you can actually see the photons where they're landing, not images where you can't see where the photons are landing. Just an obvious thing, I think. Idiot. All right. Let's see. Approximation quite nicely by taking the opening to the, okay, this is the simplifying assumption made by intro to physics professors. Who cares? And again, it's an assumption only used to validate their wave theory, but it's not an assumption that has any truth value. So again, you want to say that there's some truth value to the fact that you have limited the experiment to single photons when you haven't. And when you do the two-slit with these narrow slits, So this is where he's just wrong. You get the characteristic on-off pattern. You have twice as much light, so you see the pattern. And clearly, the argument is clearly made that the double slit is a different experiment than the single slit, that something fundamentally changes in what is produced. It's not two overlapping single slit experiments. I've never argued that two single slit experiments are just overlap for the double slit experiment. Clearly, something more complicated is happening. And I've made arguments about charge and lots of other stuff, and that these surfaces are essentially communicating with each other. So let's understand again. Okay, let's go back to the drawing. I mean, you're just such a fucking liar to say I've said anything other than these things in the past repeatedly. I've pointed out clearly that, in the math for the double slit, they're measuring. So this, let's say this is the thing blocking, okay, the pattern. So this in the double slit, this is the impediment, and this would be the single slit size of its opening. So you could say let's just approximate those two as the same distance. All right, so that's what they put in the math. In the math, the variable, the relevant variable, v, okay, is this distance. So in one experiment, the distance isn't the width of the slit, it's the width of the impediment. And the other experiment's the width. So, and you can sort of see that what that equals, though, is the separation between these surfaces. So the variable is really how far away are the surfaces. That's what's deciding how the photons interact with those surfaces, is how far away the surfaces are from each other. That's the constant in this. That's what allows these two variables to mean the same thing. These two variables couldn't mean the same thing if it wasn't for the fact that what they have in common is they decide the difference in the distance between the surfaces. So if you think of this as a surface experiment instead of an opening experiment, you can understand why there's a similarity that you're not understanding. So clearly, you can do the single slit with different size center impediments. And if the center impediment is very small, as small as the single slit, that's what is happening. It's not the width of the slits. The width of the slits are always the same. I mean, I can, in the transparencies I have, they make the width of the slit the same, and all they do is change the thickness of the center impediment. So the width of the slits is not terribly relevant in the double slit experiment. You fucking cunt. You lying sack of cruddy shit. Shouldn't have had all that. I probably shouldn't. It's just so irritating, these unaccountables. I'm just so sick of the unaccountable. All right. And when you do the two slits with these narrow slits, you get a characteristic on-off pattern. Well, obviously, it's not supposed to really be a characteristic off and off pattern, right? It's supposed to be a gradual on-off, and it doesn't really do that, which is not fucking there. So what, I don't know even what that means. You get a pattern that isn't fucking there. You get the characteristic on-off pattern, which is not fucking there when there is only one slit. So again, it is there, and all you're changing is the size, the spread of the pattern. So again, just absolute bullshit. Again, I've pointed out, again, I don't know how many times I can say it. I have already pointed out the distinction between the two slit and the single slit. That's all I can do. You don't have an explanation for that pattern in the double slit. You have no correlation to water wave mechanics to explain those two patterns superimposed. And clearly, you haven't demonstrated with anything called real evidence, okay, that the envelope pattern is related to the thickness of the slit. I mean, the impediment, not the thickness of the slits. So the very tiny, the smaller you make it, the bigger the envelope, the more extreme the envelope, the more obvious the envelope in terms of its influence. And that's just a correlation to the fact that, yes, when you have a very narrow single slit, you get a very extreme pattern in the sense that the center has most of the light and the fringes have very little light. All right. Are you going to mention these facts? So again, more assertions that I haven't mentioned this stuff. I haven't said it repeatedly and over again. When the facts are, I have, you liar. You're just a despicable liar. Okay, I've said it over and over. I've shown images of it. I've talked about it over and over. You're just a liar. Okay, are you going to be honest for once, again, in your life? Again, no evidence that I have been dishonest. No quote from me indicating anything that I was dishonest, any dishonest statement I've ever made. So just more fucking goddamn disgusting accusations from a piece of shit who thinks he has a right to lie about other people on the internet. No, of course not. Again, of course not. No evidence on your side. No evidence where I have done anything to cheat the truth in any of the videos I've produced. No evidence. Let's see, because you would rather your sycophantic audience. So again, my audience is hardly sycophants. It's basically made up of trolls like you who downvote my videos, every one of them, no matter what I say, who play these little shitty games. Are there any fake, approvals on my video? Am I doing what the other fakers do and sock accounts and like my videos? No, I have like 12 other YouTube channels I could use to pump up my own videos. I've never done that once in 10 years on the internet. You fucking lying piece of shit. Anyway, spew in a stinky, smelly, bottomless pit of arrogance and ignorance. Well, again, you're the one who has no evidence and no integrity and is demonstrating no real argument besides your ability to lie about other people and oblige them to defend themselves against your motherfucking lies. Because that's the only way anybody will pay attention to your stupid ideas, which you've only pushing because you want people to give up on free will. Why I'm doing this is clear. All right. So again, that you can pretend to tell some different story. I'm doing it because I always found the argument that physics was making silly. It's just silly. And because you're all stupid dupes and you believe in these magic wand solutions to physics problems, instead of sitting here saying there's got to be a better answer than photons split in two and then they read our minds and they can tell whether we're watching them and all this fucking crap. And then they fly into a multiverse and then they hit the multidimensional figure fagger. I mean, it's just a silly goddamn Santa Claus story. And the fact that you people are so aggressively defending it seems to me that you're the one devoted to some sort of bullshit, some kind of need to have a singularity up your ass. You're the one who, who's horny for it. And the idea they have any power over their own life to make things better. Well, again, this whole idea, oh, yeah, my brain has power over my brain. Yeah, sure it does. Yeah, sure. Your special robot will tell your stupid robot what to do because the special robot learned from the special universe. It got its brain from the multiverse. And so it has special knowledge of right and wrong. It doesn't have to learn. No, it's just got special knowledge. I mean, clearly you're just demonstrating you're the one with this philosophical agenda. All right. Any power over their own life to make things better in the world, because then you can use that as an excuse for your pathetic lack of effort to do the same. Obviously, I'm doing a lot with my existence, and again, I'm not at all ashamed of the byproducts of the hard work I've put in. I've unified physics, idiot, and it's going to be the truth someday. And scum like you are going to be something that people might actually comment on and say, yes, that really was too bad that we just let these reckless assholes with their little spam accounts go talking shit like this all over the place and waste people's time? Why do we let these assholes loose? These unaccountables. These people with not even enough courage to have an icon. Okay. All to appease your massive ego, which would be crushed by the slightest setback. So taking 7 years to do this isn't a crushing setback. So that so he's saying I'm going to be crushed by the tiniest of setbacks, and yet I haven't been crushed by any. 10 years of frustrating interactions on the internet, and I'm still not crushed, am I, asshole? So you really have your vision is so bad you can't see anything clearly or accurately, and you certainly can't see the size of my balls. Anyway, suggesting that you aren't the smartest, best member, number one foam hand wavy person on planet Earth. And again, it's just totally irrelevant. The whole channel is devoted to making arguments about what the physical evidence demonstrates and how good the physical evidence is, and how both qualitative and quantitatively, whether this is evidence enough to draw conclusions that have been drawn, and whether those conclusions should be so complete that assholes like you make it very difficult for anybody to even challenge the stupid assumptions. You know, your stupid axioms of magic forces and mind-reading photons. Well, you made your bed now. It's time you lie in it. Yeah, and I hope someday the world will impose the justice that obliges you to lie in the bed of filth and puke and shit you throw. You should have it thrown on you for eternity. I mean, they should turn your grave into a fucking urinal. Because that's what you deserve. You deserve to have it written on your fucking grave. This is a piece of fucking shit. And here's a picture of this fucker. Should be on the tombstone, the picture. This is who, this asshole, this piece of scum. Okay, and then maybe they should list your prodigy, list the ancestor, list your mother and father, the creeps who hatched a piece of scummy crud like you. You fucking gutless wonder. Yeah, list all those people. List the lineage of your scum. Okay, yeah. That's what I love about it, old Asian culture anyway. Is, scum like you'd have to Harry carry, because you would be ruining your family if you didn't. There should be consequences. Your fucking goddamn brothers and sisters or your parents or your aunts and uncles, they all should be as embarrassed as fuck that you're fucking running around talking this shit. And you don't even have the guts to stand up and do it. You scum. All right. Hide. Yeah, I don't know why hides are so much easier to do in the comments section. Yeah. What a piece of fucking shit. All right. Let's see if there's any comments. Oh, your favorite racist Jew kid. Oh, yeah, like, yeah, oh, yeah, compared to you, I'm ugly. Let's see what it looks like. I would end it if I woke up with your face. Yeah, well, if I woke up with your dick, I would kill myself. So, you think you're some kind of winner, do you? I don't think you are. Why wasn't it open? Well, that's why you have to do it over here. What a fucking piece of turd. Let's see what his wonderful channel is. The great and powerful racist Jew. So I don't know who's it's an icon of, right? So it's obviously an acetum. Okay, so religious kook Jew. So it's not Jew. It's double Jew. He's a double Jew. So maybe he's a triple Jew. So maybe he's pro-Israel. He thinks that he's the chosen people, and he thinks his race is superior. Yeah. So yeah, he's a winner all the way around, huh? It's probably not even a Jew, right? Isn't that how it usually works? How do they get over here anyway? That's a good question. Oh, okay, I didn't close that. I don't know what happened exactly there. So anyway, all right, so we'll block him. Just no point in that crap. No point at all. I wish this thing was a little longer. So, you know, this is like what, you know, why is, you know, why? So see, they put the hide the user's comment as the second possible choice, and then they move it all the way down to the fourth, fifth choice here. It's just so fucking awkward. Damn fucking Google. I mean, obviously Google they don't have any employees that actually use their website, which is, you know, seems so fucking funny. All right, so some sort of bullshit language. We don't need that here. I guess I might as well just keep my image down there for now. Let's see. I can't move this up any higher. There's really no other option here. So we'll just have to do without. Fuck that guy. Let's see. Number of slits is a precondition of the experiment. Duh. Oh, gee, nobody can figure that out. Oh, the number of the slits has something to do with the experiment. Experiment might change if you change the number of slits. Oh, yeah, nobody can figure that out. Clearly, more slits equals more changes to the medium that the object in question moved through. Well, that isn't even true. There's specific kinds of changes. It's not like more changes. It's that the changes are different. So, I mean, it just pushes it more left or it pushes it more right. You don't call that a different kind of change. It's the same kind of change. It's just a different amount of being pushed left or pushed right. God damn. The objects may be, I don't know, chuted to the fringes binomially, whatever. Then he's typing more crap. Gillibord and Gillibret. What? Giltonbrit? Who cares? Simulation. What was this bullshit? Or Bean Machine or Quincuxer. What the fuck are you talking about? You fucking lunatic. YouTube video. Why would I care about this crap? Why should I take your... I'm just getting rid of you. I got rid of you once before, you fucking piece of shit. And you're typing more fucking gibberish here. Fuck you, just fuck off. What the fuck is that crap? Ugh. I'm not doing, no, fuck this. I'm not doing this a conspiracy theorist loony stuff. So get a real screen name or just fuck off. Illuminati. Fairy princess. Oh, God, people suck. Yeah, just impossible. Fucking God damn it. Very difficult to have any kind of useful conversation with you fucking pieces of crap. All right, so I guess we'll just play this video. So this was just different sizes of single slit. Starting off with the smallest, I believe, the narrowest. And this is really narrow. I mean, smaller than a hair slit. And I tried to move in and out just to show how it doesn't change. So when you move the slits in and out of the laser beam, you don't get any radical change in the pattern. It just fades away and comes back. So it doesn't change the position of the little lines. So you don't create more bars by gradually entering and gradually exiting the slit. All right, so this is like twice as open, and then there'll be 3 times, and so this gets a little bit more bars and more bars, more bars. And again, you can see as you gradually move it in and out, it just doesn't change the position of anything at all. Which I don't know. I don't know exactly if that means anything or not, but it's just an observation that there doesn't seem to be much change. All right, so and this is the smallest, I believe. I mean, the widest opening. And again, it seems almost like it should be wide enough where this pattern should be shrinking from the inside, coming in. But no, it's still not. It still creates quite a broad pattern. And it's, like 7 human hairs or something, 5 human hairs, maybe more. And the center has that big circle thing. So I'm going to try to block that out with an impediment just to see what happens as you move it further and further away from the target. So that'll be the next step. So what I was doing here is now I'm trying, I didn't have it centered so I could turn it. But so I'm trying to increase the angle. So I'm taking the, say this was the card with the slits on it. I'm turning it like this. So I'm cutting the angle, which presumably is making the slit smaller and smaller. So, and I got to like 70 degrees and it starts to get kind of messy because I think I start hitting the edge of the paper. And so that makes a bigger pattern. But at 45-degree angle, there was like absolutely no change in the pattern. And when it was at, see right there, there was a little blob of big pattern. And I think that's because I hit the edge of the, see if I can catch that. Oh, there was a little bit of it. I was hitting the edge of the paper that holds the transparency. Yeah, no, I missed it. No, we'll just let it play for a bit. Oh, there it was. Yeah, it'd be nice if I could just capture that image. Yeah, I can't go frame by frame in this stupid program, so I'll have to try the other one next time. Okay, space bar. Oh, there. I missed it again. All right, I'll give up. So you saw it for a minute there. The bars got really big. But I think that's because the laser light was hitting the edge of the container for the transparency. So one edge was going towards the slit. So one edge was this hard edge and then the slit opening. And it's interesting that it creates that bigger pattern, but I just don't think it's not what I was looking for. So the problem is that I had this on an extender that goes this way. So when I'm trying to twist it, it's not twisting on a center. It's twisting this way instead of twisting this way. So I have to find a better holder that I can turn on its axis, on an axis that's the center of gravity, so to speak. But this pattern is like at a 70-degree angle. So this is I have it at a very sharp angle, and I'm still getting pretty much the same bar pattern as when it's straight. So even though I'm tilting it and making the opening much smaller, I'm getting substantially the same pattern, which is quite strange. And even substantially the same amount of light. I mean, you can see the center's a little duller, but it's not substantially duller. So it's just something I need to do with more precision, but I think it's a useful thing to attempt to do to see how it affects the pattern, both with these transparency slits and maybe with a real razor blade slit, to see if you see, they usually do this, they vary the slit by doing this. But frankly, you should be able to vary it just by rotating it also. And if the pattern doesn't change in terms of where the blocks end up positioning themselves, that would be more evidence that it has to do with the surfaces and their distance, because their distance stays the same. The distance of the slit difference stays the same when you rotate. So when you rotate them, the distance between these two slits stays the same. And all you're changing is how much the light can get through, which I think is an interesting change. I mean, it sort of demonstrates that if you did that with water waves, the water waves wouldn't care that you've staggered the distance. Okay, so the water waves would see the smaller slit and create a smaller wave. So it wouldn't correlate again to water waves. It would be an anti-equative. See how much more of this we got. Sorry, it's just not brilliantly done. So like I said, this is quite an extreme angle. That should be about it, I guess. And there's me turning the camera off. All right, so let's try this other one. File manager, that ain't what I'm looking for. That ain't the right one. Behind my image, unfortunately. Somewhere in here it should be. All right, this one was just garbage. Let's see, this one might have two slits on it. I think these are the two-slit experiments. They look like single slits again, but I have to wait and see. Now these are the double slit. So now you can see in this one, you're starting to get this little bit of where, you know, well, maybe you can't see them, but the bars are there, but the bars have bars inside of the bars. So that's the idea of there's a bars, then there's a dead space, and then bars, and then dead space, then bars, and then dead space, then bars, and then dead space. And these are all the same size, these ones going out. It's just they're getting duller and duller. So the black space is getting wider and wider because there's less and less photons getting here, but they're all the same size. So this is definitely the double slit. And I'm not going to remember whether this is the small opening or large opening. So sorry, I just don't remember. I think as you went larger, the impediment got larger. As the impediment gets larger, you get more of those inside bars. As you make it smaller, the inside bars start to disappear and you just get blobs. So again, you can see two bars now for each one. They're bigger bars now, but it's the same idea. They're two bars, dead space, two bars, dead space, two bars, dead space. Now we're going to go to an even smaller impediments. Now we're talking about a hair kind of thickness. And the bars get bigger and they start to blend into each other more. So now you can't see these individual little bars inside, and all you have are bars. So this is like with a human hair. So now the external slits are becoming further away in a sense because you have less in the middle, but they're using the same size openings on either side. So the openings are staying the same size, and all they're changing is how thick the thing in the middle is. So now the thing in the middle is really thin. All right, so it went from being thick to being thinner. All right, you can see that, yeah. But this size stayed the same. So as this got thicker, that these outside things moved with the thickness. The opening, total opening was exactly the same. All you're changing is how thick the middle impediment is. And so this is with the most narrow middle impediment. and you just end up with a pattern that looks more like the single slit. I mean, this almost looks exactly like the single slit because you're not seeing the little bars that are inside of each one of those bars. Now let's understand, when waves interfere, they don't create an intensity spot like this. They don't do this. What a wave interference would look like is the wave would get twice as bright, then completely dark, then twice as bright, then completely dark. And next to it, the dark spots would be places where the light never changes intensity. So it would be like a 50% light, and then the bright spot would go 50% and then 0, 50%, no, go 100% and 0. So this pattern isn't truly reflective because what's happening here is the light that should be going to the dark spots is going to the light spots. It's being moved. And in wave interference, the pressure isn't moved from the middle spot to the other spot. The spots that are constructively interfering are destructively interfering in the sense of they're going to 0 thing. So they're going all double or 0, double or 0, double or 0. And the dark spots are just going 50%, 50%, 50%, 50%. So it's very different than waves, regular waves, common waves. And it's, again, I'll reiterate, this is the simplest pattern nature can create and that you could call a pattern, is on, off, on, off, on, off. You can't get a simpler pattern than on, off, on, off, on, off. So this whole idea that every time they see on, off, they say wave interference, they think that's being smart. I think that's being foolish. So now I'm going to, I was trying different things, turning it, doing different things again to see if I can fuck up the pattern by changing, the angles. And again, this is not perfect. So there are little spots where all of a sudden it changes dramatically. But I think those are aberrations caused by my fingernail or caused by something else. You can see that most of the movement doesn't seem to, most of this rotation doesn't seem to change the size of anything or our position in any substantial way. So, like I said, not the best video in the world. So I'll try to improve on that. And I do want to take the time exposures of the fringes, the parts that go very dark, and see if I can get more resolution out of those. But it really was quite a wide pattern. As you can see, it's these precise, very clean slits do create a very rich pattern. And you can see here just how bar like that is, how it has so little, doesn't have any feel of a sine wave. It looks very on and offish. It got big and small there, so that was a real interesting point. So I don't know what happened there exactly, but you can see quite a bit of variation. But like I said, when I let it sit at 70 degrees and I got it set up at 70 degrees, the pattern didn't have any of that. See, they went from like 3 times the size. See, look, I mean, that's a very different size now than the little ones. See those little ones again? There's the small ones, and then it gets big. So I have to work on that to figure out what was happening. But I think it was the edge of the slide, the cardboard was doing this. I mean, that's dramatically different. And I don't know exactly what I did to get that dramatic. This you can see I'm fucking with it to, you know. So it probably is an error I made, probably something I did. But the fact is it's there, so I have to do it over again to find out what that mistake was, or why that condition was so radically different. You know, it's just a hardware thing. You always have to create some kind of setup, and then you have to, you know, it's like you can't just leave the shit because, you know, I have to walk on the porch. And so things get lost and stepped on and misplaced. And so I'm just not, I don't have pristine laboratory conditions. But you can see it's a lot of variation there. So I don't know what that has to be dealt with. So I don't know what that's coming from. All right, so I don't know. Well, I might as well just play it through since I videoed it. But yeah, it's just that's the way it should look when it's straight. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how I got it to go so wide. So I have to see if I can duplicate that much wider pattern. But it just might have been I hit the wrong. See, the slits are all the double slit ones are close to each other. So I might have hit the wrong slit too in fiddling with it. But like I said, I'm trying to rotate it. And most of these images are from like at least 45 degrees is fairly easy to do. And at 45 degrees, there is no dramatic change. And 45 degrees would mean half the slit width. So it would be cutting the impediment width to half, and it would be cutting the opening width to half. And yet there was no dramatic difference in the pattern. All right, so I think that's enough for my contribution. And I guess I could show you the green laser one that I'm, you know, ruined. Since I ruined it, I might as well show you it just so it doesn't feel left out. I think this is it. No, that's still red. I don't remember what this one was. But obviously double slit pattern. You can definitely see that's the double slit. I don't know if I did anything dramatic with this when I was just testing one of the double slits. So it's a pretty narrow center impediment. So that's all I remember. So pretty useless. Yeah, so this is the single slit that I annihilated. So I don't know if I did anything interesting here. Might as well just play it and see if I did. Just trying to get a view of it. Get it to see how good I could get it to image. Yeah, I remember this. The beginning of this video is crap. That's right. It was always the laser. I was having some trouble with the laser. Okay. So this ending part is where I'm moving it. So I'm moving it in front of the laser. I'm side to side to see if I can screw the pattern up. And you really can't screw it up. All you can make it do is fade a little bit. But you really can't make anything dramatic happen by slowly moving it into the light, slowly moving it out. It just doesn't do much. I mean, besides the obvious that you're moving it, it doesn't change the size of anything. And I think I might have started tilting it, but maybe I didn't tilt. No, I didn't tilt in this video. All right, so anyway, threw it in there. But yeah, I like the green, is you get a little better image, but too hot. The funny thing is, I thought it would be fine because the first laser I used had kind of a dead battery, so the laser was really weak, and that's why it worked so well. And so then I said, oh wait, this laser's dead, so maybe I better put a new battery in. And it's when I put a new battery in that I melted the transparency. So live and learn. I was probably told by somebody not to do it, and I did it anyway, I guess. Let's see. So what's this useless crap? I'm El Nino. What is that? Is that supposed to mean something? So you're stealing somebody else's name, Chris Farley, right? All other tropical storms must bow. I mean, you're just so interesting. Wow. What are you, 12 years old? I mean, really, your parents should be taken out into the public square and shot. I propose that there should be a kill shitty parents party. And we all should agree that, yes, let's just kill them. I mean, I just don't know how you get raised to be such a useless fart. I mean, you're just a fart. Man, I mean, you people, how could somebody please show up who has just a little bit of a brain? Hey, what are we talking about? Photons? I mean, how fucking dumb are you? Oh, god damn. I just don't. I mean, it has to be. I mean, it's just kind of embarrassing to be on YouTube because obviously I thought the dumbest people on earth were like on Facebook or something. But clearly, you just. Could you people demonstrate yourselves to be any dumber? I mean, how low will you go? I just, man. Idiocracy has won. All right, let's see how many people are in here, and man, just get the hell out of here. It's just no point. Nothing but fucktards. Let's see. I think it says 16. Yeah, it's enough. It should be enough for one reasonable comment. I mean, not one reasonable comment. One? Could one person please just say the word reasonable? I'm not an idiot. Could you say that maybe? A complete idiot? Maybe you're a partial idiot, but just something. No, we can't even do that. Could you just type something like, I don't generally type irrelevant mush? I just say something. Okay, so you are showing us the particles. Am I showing particles? I don't know. I'm theorizing there it's made out of particles, yes, but I can't show you photons. They're really, really tiny. How do the other experiments also reveal waves? I'm supposed to understand how to even respond to that. How do the other experiments, so what other experiments, also reveal waves? These are the classic experiments. Now you can do it, you can create these phenomenon by bouncing light off surfaces and doing some other kinds of things, but why complicate it when this is the simplest version for creating an interference, quote unquote, pattern? Now, last night I went over the interferometer and explained how that's a crock of shit and it's not based on interference at all. So I already did that last night or the night before, whatever it was. I guess it was the night before last, yes. So I'm not going to do that again. But I mean, how is, the points I've made about what's missing are real points. The point is that water going through a single slit doesn't create interference. That is evidence against wave theory, correct? Is that too complicated to say that, yes, one circumstance looks like photons, but a very similar circumstance doesn't look like photons? Now, that should mean to a logical person, I think, that, it would be reaching to say that because one circumstance fits and another circumstance doesn't fit, that I should just ignore the one that doesn't fit and just pay attention to the one that does. It means I should have some doubt about making a direct equal sign between photons and water waves, because there is no direct equality. There's evidence of a non-equality. Oh, fuck. Hey, Gary, I have a riddle for you. Well, you're going to get blocked. You're just going to get blocked for that right there. Okay, what is frivolous and goes in circles? Your antinatalist arguments, of course. Oh, that's just so brilliant. No, it isn't brilliant. It's just silly. What's useless as a fart? Your presence on Earth. Yeah, there, that's a riddle for you. Fucking skanky cunt brain. Ugh. Okay, so we already did that. There was just stay on topic. Well, he's not going to do that. He's this troll. Jesus. Jeez. It's just ironic, though, that somebody who would be arguing against antinatalism would be doing so in a manner demonstrating good cause for antinatalism, demonstrating that there's a ton of humans on Earth who are beneath, okay, the standard that we should require humans to achieve to exist. They are, in fact, maliciously retarded. We should make that a crime, like a kind of deliberate homicide and all that kind of malicious retardation. Hi. It's not quite malicious retardation, but it's pretty close. It's like malicious, I'm uneducable. Hi. That's, boy, it just means so much to me from anonymous nobody. The anonymous nobody says hi. Makes me feel so good. How are you? Why don't you ask me how I am? What's your favorite number? What's your favorite color? La, 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 la. It's just I can just, it's like you just feel the seething contempt. Just, yes, I'm reaching a maximum amount of seething contempt. God. So, 2-minute warning, let's just say. Ugh. Well, I guess we could play some of the David D. Hilster video. It's Friday night, right? But I don't know if that will be at all rewarding. I saw the very ending. He only lasted an hour. So, I don't know. I guess it was a slow night, too, for him. He doesn't have, there's nobody watching his videos that's worth a damn either. Just silly people. So it's all quite depressing. Let's see. So Q&A, blah, blah, whatever.
Hey guys, here I am tonight.
Yeah. Up to your evil doing. 14 likes, 0 dislikes. How real are those numbers? I just wonder. All right, let's see. We have a comment. Let's see if Annika can. Annika. See, I was trying to make it into something I could pronounce. A night. Yeah, a night. All right. It seems like they are creating another woo to make us believe the photons change from wave to particle. Well, it's not another. It's their foundational one from 1930, whatever, where they decided to do this silly, it has properties of both kind of nonsense, when clearly it can't have properties of both. Bowling balls will never wave anywhere. It just won't happen. Cannonballs, whatever. It's just stupid. I suppose they could if you tied them all together with strings and then fired them all at once. You could say it's a wave of cannonballs, but still would be cheating the language. I'm just saying that there's the correlation between photons and mediums like water, substances that wave. The correlations are very, very small. They're not correlated highly. They're correlated only in really one circumstance, when you have two openings. And the only reason why in two openings water waves create interference is because of the drag with the surfaces. So there's a cause for that effect. And the cause is substantially different than the cause in these experiments. And I've pointed out with the radar experiment that eventually some form of that experiment will get done. And I think it'll clearly demonstrate that the radar experiment is creating a very similar result, but for a very different reason, because the signals are just being jammed. You're just jamming the transmission. The two radio towers are sending the same signal, and when they're out of phase, the frequencies are still the same being sent, and the receiver can't tell where the signal's coming from. It's just receiving twice the frequency. It's not receiving the right signal anymore. It can't filter out of the two signals two individual signals because they're just overlapping. So all it's seeing is this. It can't separate out that it's two separate frequencies. So when you jam a radio, that's what essentially you're doing. You're just sending the same frequency, and because you're sending the same frequency and it's out of phase, it screws up the ability to receive the signal. So it has nothing to do with interference. There's a perfectly rational explanation for what's causing the effect, and it has nothing in common with water waves. Nothing. There's no friction. There's no tension in the medium. It has no correlation whatsoever, except there's a similar on-off pattern. Again, the simplest pattern in the universe. Oh, why does light have a finite speed? Because there wouldn't be a universe if it didn't. That's why. See, if it doesn't have a finite speed, then instantaneous exists. And if things happen instantaneously, everything just happened, and so there's no events anymore, because the events all happened already. An infinite number of them happened instantaneously. And so with the infinity already collapsed. I mean, it's just such a useless question. No one's ever going to be able to give you answers to some of these questions in anything but a general term, and just say, because the universe isn't perfect, something like that. If the universe was perfect, then it wouldn't have, these errors in it. But this is what it did. It errored. Something like that. You're not going to get any better answer than that. But it just amazes me that this is all you people can do, is talk about the completely distant and abstract, and you can't talk about a single one of these mechanical truths that are so much more relevant to our existence. I mean, it seems logical to me that if things are moving from one place to another place, that they shouldn't be able to do it instantaneously. So maybe to you, it seems like a question worth asking, but it seems logical to me that no, distance should have a consequence. Just should. What slows light then, if it's functionless then? I don't know. What's functionalist about light? Light is the most functional thing in the universe, frankly. What slows light? Light doesn't slow. All you can do is make the path the light has to travel longer. So like in a fiber optic cable, signals don't move the speed of light, even though it's fiber optics and it's light, because the light's not moving straight through the fiber optic cable. It's reflecting off the sides. So it travels a much longer distance than the cable length. And the same is true when light goes through glass or something. It's not traveling a nice straight line. The glass isn't transparent, like it has a bunch of empty spaces. Glass is hard. Glass is solid, like a piece of aluminum even, right? I mean, it probably weighs the same as, probably weighs more than aluminum. So even though it's transparent, it's full of atoms. And the light isn't going in between the atoms. It's being transmitted through the atoms. That means it's doing this shit. It's moving through from electron to electron. It's being transferred from electron to electron. And it takes time to be transferred. Finite bullshit. Superior mind. What does that even mean? I don't know what that means. What does that stupid slop that you just wrote mean? What is that? Oh, god damn. Anyway, what gives a medium its relative permutility and permutivity? Those are just such cruddy words, frankly. But clearly, mediums are created by tension. That means they are the atoms. You've heard of atoms, right? And electrons and protons. Well, they're attracted and repelled depending on distance. So sometimes when they're far apart, they're attracted to each other. That is, they have a bond. You get too close, then the electrons are repulsive, and they kind of say you can't get any closer. So they're caught in tension. So molecules tend to migrate towards each other. They tend to do that. Migrate to a comfortable place. And if you move them further away, They don't want to move further away, not strongly, but just a little bit. They don't want to, and they don't. And it gets kind of strong getting closer. They don't like getting too close, and you have to push them hard with energy to force them together, to have them break through the membrane barrier of the electrons. The electrons are like a membrane, and you have to break the membrane to lock the atoms together. But otherwise, the atoms still have some attraction to each other, and that's tension. So that's the cohesion of water. Water wants to turn into like a little drop of water. It wants to stick together. So that's its permutivity. That means that when you move one atom, you move all the atoms because they're all sitting there locked together like magnets. You push one magnet and all the other magnets get pushed. So that decides how close they are together, how much tension there is, will dictate how quickly you can poke one of them and all the others move. It doesn't slow. Yes, I already said that. P.S. It's frictionless, not functionalist. Right. Same difference, really. I mean, obviously, it has nothing to do with friction that slows the light down, because the light doesn't slow down. It leaves going the same speed it went into any medium. So we know the light isn't, you can sort of deduce logically that if it was losing speed because of friction, how would it get the speed back? Because friction is loss. Friction means you lost energy. So how would you get the energy back by it's like getting out of quicksand and becoming perfectly dry. How would you get perfectly dry? You know, you'd still have quicksand all over you, water. All right. Do you think Maxwell's equations are useful? Of course. Maxwell's equations should have been the foundation for unifying physics if they didn't go backwards. So their stupid assumption was, let's make light magnetic instead of the other way around, which would have been to say, let's realize that light is like magnetism, the same force. Okay, they're both forces. So instead of making light a force, they made how to say that? They turned it upside down. I'm just saying they should have figured out that the speed of light should have been called the speed of force. They should have recognized that because magnetism moves at the same speed as light, this is a hugely important fact, and that this is obviously, and then when gravity is found to be the same thing, they should have figured out that this is the truth, that this is the same force. And there's any theory they develop should recognize that all three of these things have to be on the same foundation. One of them can't be made by bent space, and another one being made by virtual photons. That's retarded. They're the same thing. How can they be made of different things when they're the same thing? Well, anyway, so but Maxwell's are again, you can't take them too literally, but they're very good approximations. Obviously, Maxwell's equations break down because of this stupid surface problem, right? Things at a distance radiate in all directions as individual point sources. But as I start to move them closer and closer together, I essentially create infinities inside of here, in the sense that I can't escape hitting this other surface. So if I have a little LED here that's radiating light, a little LED on here that's radiating light, when I bring these surfaces closer and closer, there's a point where almost 0% of the LED light escapes. So I can't help for this LED to hit all of this pen, and for the LED on this pen to hit all of this surface. And so the inverse square law breaks down. And so that's, any equation that's sort of dependent on the inverse square law, you have to always recognize that it breaks down when you start bringing things very close together. And, Maxwell's equations have that problem. I mean, that's why they use these small angle approximations. They have all these little gimmicks that protect them from going places they're not supposed to. All right. What makes up an atom? Electrons and protons, and neutrons are just an electron and a proton. How is it formed? See, I mean, more questions that just have no use. I don't know. Nobody's going to give you a real good answer to those questions, but it's clear that it's pressure forces things together. They get pushed into each other and find, oh, it's not so bad in here. It's like you go to some smelly apartment building and then somebody pushes you through the door and you end up in a cruddy apartment, but they have good TV and lots of potato chips, and you just say, hell with it, I'll stay here. So even though you thought it was a shithole, you say, yeah, it's not so bad. After all, once I'm in here, it's not so bad. Something like that. And where does its existence originate from? I'll just block it. If this is all you can do is ask the most preposterously stupid questions that couldn't have any meaning whatsoever to anybody trying to do rational physics. I mean, these origin questions are useless. Nobody has a map of what happened 50 trillion years ago when the universe could have been created for all we know. Dumbass. Oh, I just so sick. What is it with? I just don't know why they have this compulsive need to ask questions that couldn't possibly matter. The answer is going to be a stupid answer. The answer is not going to be because God did it. The God that wasn't created by any mechanism. The God that somehow always existed, but, forever. And then after thinking forever, decided to start making atoms or something. That's not going to be the fucking answer, retard. Fuck. It's a mechanical system. There's some mechanical reason. Duh. Fuck. Balance, distance, and balance of internal forces. I mean, that just doesn't mean anything. Forms of convergence. What the fuck are you talking about? Hi, Gary. No, thank you. Jeez. Can you use your sweaty balls to boil eggs? No, is the obvious answer. God, I'm an idiot. I mean, why should I even have to answer that question for somebody? Jesus. They can't figure that out for themselves? Somebody should boil your mother's ovaries. Whew. Somebody should have boiled them. I vote for more serial killers. Yeah, let's not put them in jail. They can't hardly ever make a mistake. I mean, if they're killing humans, they can't hardly make a mistake. Does anyone here also watch the Amendum channel? So this, again, is not on the subject. It's not relevant. Please don't do this. Stop it. Shit. I mean, I plead. These are people who aren't even my enemies, and they can't even, they can't do something useful. Oh, just amazing. Must endeavor to persevere. My neighbor has a monster truck, and I just think some days, you know, he goes out for work, and I'm sure he doesn't look underneath the tires. And I think, yeah, someday I just put my head down and let one of those 22-inch tires run over my head. All right, we'll play a little bit of David and then get the hell out of here, I guess.
Got some stuff here today. Planned a little bit more. Got my Beija Flor Genealopolis.
Who cares? Apple Lapidishy, blah, 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 blah.
We're going live here, which is cool. Everybody always checks that. Make sure check the little red dot. And there it is. I'm seeing signals all over the place.
Yeah, let's go read a moron comment from one of his usual morons. Dave, this is great, as you have 11 thumbs up already. I mean, she's stupid enough to think those are real people. I mean, she's not, you know, I mean, this is the caliber, you know, people are just so gullible and dupable. You know, what hope is it they're even explaining anything to people so dumb to think that, oh, yes, David's very popular? No. Yeah, he's got 14 likes and 31 views. I mean, that's a ratio nobody on the internet achieves. No one on the internet achieves that ratio of a thumb up per half of view. No one. And she falls for it. Okay, nothing here. So play this. Open
These live too. So for those of you who don't know, while I have wait for people to join us, I've been in Brazil, and of course I have a samba school here in the United States. So what's a samba school? They're the big organizations that put on those incredible samba parades in Rio de Janeiro, and of course,
gross.
You're on it. And those organizations are huge organizations where thousands, tens of thousands of people belong to a samba school or samba club. It's really, they have a big place, and they have a place called the Big Tent, which isn't a tent, it's a big building where
do shake your ass, do shake your ass. Yeah, samba. You know, idiocracy. Yeah.
Make all their floats and all their costumes all year. Then once a year they compete in the Samba Dome. And this was Beija Flor who won this year, 2018, in the Samba Dome. My Samba School Beija Flor means kiss flowers, and it has GRES, which could have a Chiva Escola de Samba. So it's like the
clever.
Samba School Beija Flor Genealopolis is the place where they are located. It's a city across the bay from Rio de Janeiro. And I see we're starting to get some people here. So you wonder, I got all the shirts. I love shirts. I got a ton of shirts. Got
so more whiny crap. So you know, I'm sorry, Weiss balls. Okay, what have you said that I should find so fucking goddamn interesting? Right? I mean, I'm sorry. In my opinion, these are totally inappropriate to the purpose of this channel, as been expressed over numerous videos, which is to make a correlation, a comparison between conventional physics and a much better theory that unifies physics. That's my intent. Subjects relevant to that process. And I've sort of said over and over, the things that aren't relevant are creation stories. It's not what I'm doing. I'm not giving you a, you know, a counter to their theory of creation, because their theory of creation is completely unevidenced. Just completely made up. It's a Three Bears story, so why should I even waste time on it? Anyway, I entered here with some respect for you, and calling me a stupid retard doesn't leave me with any reason to want to stay. Fine, fuck off then. I wish I could ask some generally related questions, but I fear for your reaction. I'm sorry. I'm honestly saying, look, I pointed out how the interferometer has no theoretical grounding. I pointed out why it doesn't. Now, you can either present an argument saying, yes, it does, and this is why, or you can say, good work, Gary. You know, wow, that sure did poke a hole in their bullshit. But you don't do either one of those. Instead, you talk about, but how heavy is a banana peel? How many atoms are in a banana peel? I don't know off the top of my head.
Learn them all the time. So you have ones you'll see from Samba. You're going to see other ones that I have that are from physics, and from my hobby of physics and cosmology, and other things. But I get these from.
So far, uninteresting, Dave.
And Big Florida. Well, I was cool when I.
Who cares?
I saw somebody when we were doing a big show, and we traded. It's like, hey, I'll give you one of my shirts for one of your shirts. And that's how I got it.
So. Right. So you're a shirt wearer. Fine. A billboard wearer.
Pretty cool. Welcome one person. Today it's going to be pretty cool. I just noticed here. I have a reason I have this, and it's because I'm going to be talking about the experimental historic foundation of electricity. It's going to be pretty cool, actually, because it turns out that while we build these giant colliders that cost $1 billion or more, probably the most sophisticated machines maybe ever built by man, we don't even know the basics of physics, which is quite amazing. And I think that's why you have so many people outside the mainstream who are working, because we know we haven't answered things like, what's electricity? What's static electricity? What's magnetic fields? How does that all work? How does that interact with...
They have theories. The problem is they're axioms. They're underlying notions they've chosen badly. So they're trying to make a Frankenstein, like on your shirt. They're trying to make it into a tap dancer. And it's like, no, you don't do that with a Frankenstein. So you have to recognize that you have to start with the right mechanism to be able to make this thing work. You have to make bricks out of cement. You can't make them out of toothpaste or something. It's got to, and the problem is their foundations of their physics has flaws in it, and they're not willing to fix those flaws. And until they fix those flaws, everything else they build looks hideous and monstrous, because it's made out of compensations for the fact that they're not using real bricks.
Atoms and subatomic structure. What's light? What's gravity? Those kinds of things. We don't know. Meanwhile, we're pretending to find these particles. And if you haven't read the Higgs Fake, then you need to read the Higgs Fake, and they will. You'll learn all about this. Let's see how we're doing here. I'm gonna get on here. Make sure. There it is. Says me live. I got one person. Oh, Lisa's there. At least let me get down to my chat. You and me tonight. Wait, I have 11 thumbs up already. I'm following along with the art tutorial tonight. Hey, cool. The person doesn't talk. Don't worry. This is recorded. Actually, who's going to be really happy is going to be Professor Andrea Cease, who wrote this book. Let me get that on the screen again. Let me move it up here. Andre K.T. Assis. He's a really great guy. I've known him for quite a while. And he has sent me a kit, which I'll show a little bit.
Right. He sent it to him like 3 months ago, and he never did anything with it, never put it together, which, okay, I don't get around to things either. But, blah, blah, blah. All right. In a nutshell, could you explain the two-slit experiment? I've already done this so many times with reference to why mainstream physics is wrong. Well, I've sort of done that, right? I mean, I pointed out how there's no correlation in the single slit at all with water waves. They don't behave the same at all. I've pointed out how in waves, the pattern isn't made because you take water that should have gone here and you put it over here. That doesn't happen in water waves. In water waves, the water goes here twice as much, and then it goes twice as little here, twice as much and twice as little. I've done this. I just did that in this video. I explained why it's wrong to assume it's wave interference when all it is an on and off pattern, which is the simplest pattern you can make that you could call a pattern. So obviously it's the most common pattern, you could argue, in the universe, made by lots of different mechanisms, can create on-off patterns, not exclusively interference. So, and you're saying this shouldn't irritate me. I should now be completely redundant and remake all the statements I just made in this video and what I made 2 nights ago in the video. Oh, damn it. Hi, Gary. It's Ash. I'm back. What's up, bud? You think that's going to work with me too? Why do you people bother? Why do you bother? Oh, what causes the on-off pattern? Well, I've explained that in videos, and I'm not going to explain it in this live room again. But the argument I'm making is that surfaces are not uncomplex things. Surfaces are very complex. And just something as simple as a piece of glass, all right, is essentially a compound surface. There's the external surface between the air and the glass. There's any crud that happens to be on the surface of the glass. On all of those changes in material form, create changes that change how much the glass reflects light, change substantially how light diffracts, and that there's a lot more complexity to changes in surfaces, that is, changes in material content. It changes permutivity and permeability, okay? But, you know, in theory, these are the complex things, surfaces. Surfaces are complex areas where there is a bunch of exchanges between the two media. The air is blending into this metal, and this metal is blending into the air. It's just a fact. Little atoms of steel move further away and go back in, further away. They're bouncing off of this surface. There's lots of activity happening on this surface. How hot this thing is creates activity, lots of activity. And the light, as you make a slit smaller and smaller, you're making it more and more probable that you're going to hit next to the surface, right? And next to the surface is a complex place where you could be hitting electrons. And if you hit electrons with photons, you'll always get a kind of scatter. You'll change the direction of the photon. That's a fact in physics. That if the electron is moving and you hit it with a photon, the photon's going a new direction. And that's causing the pattern. In general, that's my explanation. Now, the specifics of how exactly that happens, that gets a little complicated. But the point is there's a certain degree change, right? You saw the single-slit pattern. There's just an angular change, the same angular change over and over again. This could be called 3 degrees. This could call 6 degrees. This could be called 9 degrees. This would be 12 degrees. It's just a consistent angular change. So if you hit 1 electron, you go 3 degrees. You hit 2 electrons, you get 6 degrees. You hit 3 electrons, you get 9 degrees. See how simple it could be? Each electron's under pressure, tension, and the amount of tension will decide how much the photon gets deflected. So if it hits 1 electron, it goes 3 degrees. Now, I could hit another electron and go 3 degrees this way. Could happen, okay? And then it'll be back to 0 degrees again. But the point is if it hits 3 degrees, 3 degrees, 3 degrees, see, and the light gets dimmer and dimmer as you go further out because it becomes less and less likely that you're going to hit 12 electrons. But some photons do. There's a simple explanation. No Copenhagen needed, no many worlds needed, no photons in 2 places, no wave functions, no bullshit. A simple explanation does the job. And the point is, they've closed the door to the conversation. They're the ones saying they know light is a wave. My argument is the evidence is incredibly weak, not strong, incredibly weak evidence. They're the ones who shouldn't be declaring the truth. It's not about me explaining it. It's about them recognizing their explanation is weak and that they need to collect a lot more evidence and that maybe they should do a little more research. All right, so back to Dave.
Let me get more people in here. So, hey, yeah, painting. Boy, I haven't done art. Most of my art I do these days is graphic art because I have to do
he's
it
talking about
for
his art again.
our physics group and also our Brazilian samba group. So I do lots of graphics. Unfortunately, I don't do a whole lot of art. Although I have done a few drawings as of late, pencil drawings, which I framed for my wife of her mom and oh no, that was of her aunt. So I did a drawing not too long ago. But I don't really do art, unfortunately, man. I hope to get back to that. See if I emailed you a presentation at which many people spoke about.
Yes, me likewise. I don't do any art anymore. Just paintings still sitting there that I haven't touched in 2 years. Time. It's just this time. I need more of it.
Anti-gravity, would you look at it or not? Absolutely. No problem. Second question, can you tell me I'm on my computer and not using talk to text? Oh, that's pretty cool. My area is human language and computers, but I actually work in the area of getting computers to understand written language because when you tell your computer something, it translates them to letters in the alphabet, and then of course it's got to understand what those are. People don't realize there's a whole phase to that. They think it's, oh, if I speak and it's got the words there, it's understanding. No, they're just letters, and so that's what I do. Let us talk. Let us thank you, Socialist from Labor Day weekend. I recommend Eugene V. Debs. Yeah, I think I've heard of him. But of course, we had a great victory here in Florida, and that's pretty cool. We had Gillum won, who is a people's person. He's shocking. He's a progressive. Hopefully, he'll win here.
Yeah, hopefully, right. They're just going further loony left and right. I mean, it's just they're giving us less and less choice. It's just so bad. I mean, your choice is like I don't even know how to describe the loop-de-doo liberals, just because the loop-de-doo liberals have never had power, so you can't even compare them to like Stalin or something. It's not really a good comparison. I mean, he wasn't nearly as good a socialist as one could argue. So you don't even have anything. You don't even have like an alternative to the Republican fascism. Give it all to the rich, and but you have this idiotic notion that somehow it makes sense to give it all to the poor. No, the rich and the poor both suck. They're the enemies of the working man. Both poor people are his enemy, and rich people are his enemy. If he could sink both of their boats, life would get so much better. I mean, if you just could get rid of the uselessly dysfunctional, and I would include myself in that category, unfortunately. And get rid of the fucking high maintenance, useless bags of inheritance wealth shittery. Life on Earth could be so much better for human beings. I mean, the scummy poor and the scummy rich are the problem.
I see some more people have joined us, and it says, I will be listening and watching the tutorial for no problem at all. Like I said, I'm experimenting with this whole thing. Although I will tell you, I get a lot of views of this. I think it's because people are sort of listening to it, sort of sitting on the side while they're working and doing other things and listening to the ramblings on, I guess. But maybe, am I getting enough volume here? You guys hearing this well enough? Hello, everybody. Make yourself known. Hello. I am here tonight to talk.
So he hasn't said anything yet, right? I'm here to talk about a book about electricity that's really cool, but I'm not going to say anything specific about any subject that has anything to do with anything. Blah, 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 blah.
About the experimental and historical foundations of electricity. And I was saying, and I was talking to Lisa, repeat that again. That's what we're saying. And that is the Higgs particle, Higgs boson, the Large Hadron Collider, which costs probably what, $1 billion, a couple $1 billion. I don't know. It costs a lot of money. Probably costs a lot of money to run this.
I think it's 32 billion, but whatever.
Well, it's probably it is the most expensive experiment ever built. And this is what we get out of it. Invented particles that we have that were not really found, or to pretend to be found, by two teams who pretended to find them, or to find the signals as Dr. Alexander Unsker. Remember? Don't believe any of this. Hey, don't take my word for it. Read this.
No, I'm not going to do that. But whatever. I think I can tell it's a fake just by the fact that the thing, it doesn't really exist, and they're only saying it exists because they found its great-great-grandnephew. And so because Frankenstein monster has a great-great-grandnephew, it must be a Frankenstein somewhere, some kind of horseshit like that. It's just, yeah. Or whatever, let's jump ahead. Higgs is not a very interesting subject.
Talked with my father, who's visiting, is traveling, visiting his sister in Indiana. I don't know if you're watching, Dad. Hello. You're probably not having as much fun as you should if you actually watching this, but he says he tunes in once in a while. So my friends, hello to you. Hey, if you know me personally, you're around my area, give me a shout out. There on the.
No, it's pretty pathetic. It's, my family never watched any of my videos, but I can sort of understand. Yeah. Sort of. They're not much like me.
Chats, but regardless, my father and I were talking about our particle model, and I came up with a fantastic in the last month or so to describe what we came up with. And this is what we came up with, and this is a technical term for those of you who know it. But in my opinion, the particle model is a Turing machine for the universe.
Oh, whatever. So it imitates a universe. How the fuck is he going to make this make sense? Oh, it's a fantastic idea. We'll call our model a Turing machine of the universe because it's imitating the universe, maybe. And it doesn't, of course. Oh, let's see. I'm sorry to change the subject. I'll go. Okay, cool. Please don't hate on the question, but can anti-gravity, levitation, so again, such an important thing, be artificially engineered? Of course it can. It just requires a ton of energy. So you have to compensate for the gravitational force, which, if I ask somebody to calculate, is a tremendous amount of energy, right? If I want to move this thing as fast as this falls, going this way, right? You can imagine, this. I mean, we can move things fairly easy because we're huge and make a lot of calories and do all that stuff. But I just mean, if you thought about it, how many photons it would take to move this across this space at the same speed this falls, you'd sort of get the idea that to make that much energy, wattage wise, the watts to move this, let's just say it's I don't know. Watts isn't really great because it doesn't have a time component, so it doesn't tell you much. But let's just say it's a quantity of energy, 25 watts, we'll say, of energy to do this. It would be the same, like for me to take this mass and move it from here to here, let's say, would be as much as a 10-watt bulb burning for an hour. Okay, realistically, that's how much energy it would take. So when you want to do this levitating thing, you just have to recognize that, to do it, you're going to have to provide that much energy, because the molten Earth is demonstrating how much energy has gone into making the gravity. Okay, so the gravity's really powerful if you think about how much energy it's made out of. And to compensate for it, you have to do real work. So you have to have real watts. You have to put real energy into it. So we already have levitating machines in the sense that we can create magnetism and counter gravity with it. But it's expensive and bulky. All right. Have you ever investigated the idea? I've thought about gravity. And in the past, I had some notions that there might be some trick, where you can just, because gravity was never explained as an energy force. It was always explained as a bent space or some other kind of medium thing. So I had some notion that maybe you could trick it. But now I realize you can't trick it. I mean, all you can do is use magnets, because magnets are filtering the force, so you can glean a little bit more of an advantage using a magnet. but you still have to make the magnets out of something, and it's still going to cost you money to do that. Could you explain in your words what gravity is? Yes, well, gravity is a force raining down on us constantly, in the sense that the people on the other side of the center of the earth, right? So, we're on this earth, and the people on the bottom half of the earth and all the ground below them to the center, from the center to whatever, Fuji, there's a whole bunch of mass. So all the people are standing on a big giant heavy hunk of metal, and that whole structure is absorbing momentum. That is, it's all moving towards the center, and so it's absorbing little energy bits, little fish that are swimming, and they're caught inside that matter, and that's why it's so hot, is it's moving. And by them being caught down there, they didn't get to me. So the stuff pushing down has no counterbalance. So I get pushed down. I start moving. I start absorbing more stuff going this way than stuff going this way, because more stuff is hitting me this way than is hitting me this way. So I'm absorbing momentum down, and in fact causing the people down there to absorb energy back up this way. So it's yin and yang. They're feeding each other, and they're absorbing a ton of energy. So the earth is essentially a giant battery that is absorbing energy. That's why it's hot inside. And the consequence is we lack buoyancy, and so we sink. A Turing machine is for the universe, ? Yes, I also question that. Like said, with certain compositions, you can do the filtering thing to create levitation, i.e. magnetism. Yes, like said. Negative pressure created due to energy hitting opposite side of the object. Negative pressure created due to energy. Now, it's energy absorbed, so we always have to be careful of this hitting word. Clearly, we're hit, but the process of being hit is an absorption. What you do when something hits you and bounces off, because it's reflecting. Okay, so understand it hits and it reflects, let's say. Well, what really happened was you took the movement in and you took it. Well, I'm going the wrong way. You took it. So the thing came in, hit you, you took that, and you gave back this. So you took this direction, you took this direction, and you gave back the opposite direction. I thought I had this thing reversed, so the arrows went the same way. Now I should be less confused. But anyway, the point is when the energy comes in, I absorb it. I move the direction it was going, and it moves the opposite direction. It means I essentially gave away that way, and I kept this way. So I'm just saying you have to understand a hit is an exchange. So when the two steel balls come into each other and they bounce back out, they're doing exactly the same thing, like if they went right through each other. But you have to understand it was a perfect exchange. One of them gave away this way and one of them gave away that way. I mean, they're just exchanging. So if the Earth is absorbing momentum, half the Earth is absorbing momentum in one direction and half the Earth is absorbing momentum in the other direction. That's why it's hot, because that's called pressure. Everything's getting smashed towards the center, but the absorption of energy is real. There's real material, real atoms really moving towards the center. Okay, absorbing momentum, the atoms itself absorbing energy. Well, they're absorbing energy in the sense that energy is movement. So it can either be movement inside of an atom, like the electrons get compressed, or the literal movement of the atoms means that bits inside of the atom have to have a directional imbalance. That means they had to absorb the energy. So I've explained how you absorb energy by explaining that if I had a loop in a racetrack, if I had a Hot Wheels car and I made a loop, and I just made that loop so it goes continuously. When I push the car onto the loop, okay, there's no friction. The car just gets stuck in the loop. But if I had the whole loop on a floating mechanism, you would see that the direction the car went in is the direction the whole island would move. So the whole atom would have absorbed that vector of momentum. So yes, when an atom moves, it moves because it had to absorb a bunch of Hot Wheels cars going that way. And they're caught inside the atom. Now they might be doing this, and you can't tell where they came in. They could have come in this way. They could have come in this way. You can't tell where they came in, but the atom knows. Okay, it's written in the signature of the atom's motion which way the cars came in. I hope that's enough. All right, what structure? Let's see. So the Earth is absorbing momentum. What structure would an atom be to absorb the momentum? What structure would an atom be to absorb that momentum? It's just a trap. And I've explained how the magnetism works and how the two forces work. It just, there's a perpendicular catch. Okay, the red force comes out of black things perpendicularly. The black force comes out of red things perpendicularly. Point is you can create a square for right turns really easy. And the even simpler argument is that all I have to do, I can do the same experiment with the Hot Wheel thing, with the loop-to-loop. I can do the same experiment if I just let it come in, hit a wall, and then stick another wall up behind it. And the thing bounces off that wall, and then it bounces off this wall, and it bounces off that wall. The fact is that island will also move in the direction of the initial impact. So the first impact will be the remembered impact. The rest of the back and forth won't have any effect, and the only movement will be in that direction. All right, the energy crosses the surface. This messy word, surface, and moves through the object. The energy is usually in the form of tiny bits, these little force bits. And electrons and protons filter them. That means electrons and protons are charged. They radiate these little bits. The bits come into an electron, the bits fly out of electrons. So when an electron and an electron meet, they never hit each other. They bounce off each other's force. So the radiation off the electron from one thing affects the radiation from the other thing. The force doesn't interact, but the force from one hits the matter of the other, and the force from this one hits the matter of this, and that pushes the things away from each other. So it's always the force bits that are being collected. There's very little real contact between matter bits. Matter bits really don't hit each other. They just send force. They translate force. This piece of matter says, I'm in imbalance, therefore I have to move this way. The piece over here says, by you moving, you absorbed force, which means I didn't get force, which means I'm going to move. So it's that kind of, but you have to understand the difference between gravity and magnetism is the gravity force is not filtered, the magnetic force is, and atoms are magnetic. So atoms are using filtered force, which means the rules are a little different. It means that electrons are always repulsive. It means protons are always repulsive with each other, and vice versa. Electrons are attracted to protons because they don't produce the energy that reflects off of electrons. All right, anyway. I've done videos that detail that. It's on my website, links below. The energy crosses the surface and moves through the object. The example, Okay, so I guess that's as with the example of light moving through the glass. Well, again, it doesn't move through the glass. It is exchanged by the electrons. The electrons move, and when they move, they're essentially pushing force, and the force just keeps getting pushed, and then the last electron moves out, can't go anywhere, so it moves back, and when it moves back, it releases a new photon. And it just happens that whatever photon goes in, the same energy, the same frequency, the same bounce rate goes out. So it causes a perturbation at one end, and the same perturbation happens at the other end, and it just produces a new photon, a new bit of energy at the same frequency. And it does that reliably because of the geometry. The geometry is nice and stable, so it duplicates what goes in, comes out. And if you change the geometry, that is, you scratch the surface of the glass, change the positions of the atoms, then you can make the light go crooked. All right. All right. If the Earth absorbs momentum, what causes the momentum to attract towards the Earth in the first place? What causes the momentum? There's nothing causing the momentum. There's cosmic background radiation. That's a fact. And if you just imagine that, well, maybe gravity comes from the same place. That is a force that's not at a frequency. And that force is likewise coming from the same place the cosmic background radiation is coming from. So the cosmic background radiation, in my opinion, could be described as just random little gravity bits that happen to have the same wavelength as light we see. So every now and then, gravity looks like it's coming at a frequency just by random chance. So the external universe creates random photons of different frequencies. So, but the gravity is what causes the initial force, which gets imbalanced by absorption by the material bits. So if the material bit just stays still, the force stays exactly the same. Just as much force goes in as force goes out. But if the material bit moves, that means force stayed in here going this way, and some other force was released. So now we have imbalance in the field, and everything else will react to that imbalance. All right. All right, it's already moving. So this is Superior Mind's explanation. It's already moving in all directions, but there will always be a deficit of certain directions on opposing sides. Everything's being jiggled by the force, just because the force can't be perfectly symmetrical. So at any one moment, everything feels a tug in some direction. But over time, it will all balance out to 50-50, just as many heads as tails. So probabilistically, it's a balanced field over time, but at any 1 millisecond, everything's jiggling, everything's moving in a direction. But that's not the source of the energy. Again, the source of the energy is the external pressure, which is gravity, and everything is being affected by it. The tiniest little bit inside the atom, the electrons, the protons, the neutrons, all these little bits are being pressurized by that force. The atoms themselves are being pressurized by that force. The planet itself is being pressurized by the force. It's the pressure, and by filtering that pressure, by allowing it to come in one way and leave some other way, objects, create low pressure zones and high pressure zones. They increase the pressure going one way and decrease the pressure going another way. And by doing that, create these attractive and repulsive consequences. It's already moving in all directions. Yeah, well, that wasn't a bad explanation, frankly, but, somebody who hasn't watched the videos isn't going to get it. The point is, I have 1,000 videos on this channel. I know it's a lot of videos. I have some overview videos that go through the basic concepts. A basic outline is on the website. Some of it's inaccurate, but, I haven't fixed it yet. But the basic ideas are in there about how this force is just filtered by magnetism. You know, so a lot of the basic concepts are there. Really do have to fix the website. But as an outline, it's not terrible. But the overview videos that you can get to on the channel page they're pretty good. I mean, I probably should do another one just for fun. But it really is that simple. It's just about there's force bits moving the speed of light, and then there's matter bits that have no innate speed. And every bit of motion they have has to be caused by being pushed. Electrons won't just keep moving through space. You have to keep pushing them with a voltage to keep them moving. So you have to sort of understand that the matter bits don't move freely. They can only move freely when they've created a complex structure that allows them to be propelled perpetually. So electrons, unlike photons, they just don't keep moving. They lose their velocity to the bigger field. All right, anyway, but that's a more complex, subtle argument that probably best not to get into right here. The silver in the Stearns Gerlich results. Again, you know, I don't know what to tell you, okay? If you think this idea of spin makes any sense, fine. I have explained the Stern-Gerlich machine has a huge flaw in the sense that the electron is really sensitive to magnetic fields. And you can't actually make it go into the machine without recognizing it's going into a magnetic field. And it's already going to screw up the electron before it even gets to the machine. It's just not possible to say, I have an electron spinning this way, and I'm going to put it into a machine, okay, and I have the expectation that it's still spinning this way when it's in the middle of the machine. It's a silly expectation. All right, anyway, 50% opposite spin, both attractive and repulsive. Again, it's just, I have no obligation to acknowledge the existence of any concept of spin or that it has any meaning whatsoever to the function of an electron or to the function of atoms or to the creation of magnetism. Spin is, in my opinion, a useless contrivance that has no fundamental purpose. It's superfluous to accurate explanation. All right. You better than KW. Yeah, I would hope anybody who, I mean, you can only go with what? Carnival Barker. I mean, Ken Wheeler is a shit talker. He doesn't put up anything called evidence of anything. It's kind of like Bob Ross, or whatever. You know, useless comparisons, useless critiques. I don't really need your critique of my performance. I'm here to argue physics, not to argue whether I argue physics well. It's really not the point. I mean, you could email me your criticisms if you wish, but I don't think they're very constructive in the actual effort to make a conversation. I don't think it really helps to start talking about whether you're a good conversationalist. I just don't think it's useful. I started to realize over time that spin on such a small scale results in more questions about structure. Well, you have to explain where that momentum, spin is a form of momentum, right? There's no getting around that. So you have to explain, well, how do the electrons acquire spin? And wouldn't that indicate, if, say, they were acquiring it the same way that photons interact with material bodies, wouldn't that mean that you are now breaking the kinetic purity of the system, in the sense that now if you can spin an object, that's stealing part of your momentum So now you're making partial photons, right? So somehow, how does the photon retain its momentum in spin? And you could argue that it could lose frequency, which might be a legitimate argument, right? So a photon goes in a blue piece, it hits a spinning electron, it comes out red because the spin is slower than the frequency of the distance of the bits hitting. But I think it just creates complexity that you don't need. I don't think electrons can store energy. The storage is outside the electrons, between the electrons. By itself, an electron has no mass. It doesn't have any substance. It's only when it's being pushed. So it's just like us in a theory, right? Theoretically, I don't have any mass left and right, right? I certainly don't have any mass in that direction, right? I mean, if I put a scale on my head, it'll say 0, right? Now, if I put a scale next to me, it'll say 0, right? There's nothing. I don't have any mass that way. Seems I have a lot of mass going down. So I'm just saying mass is really about your momentum. You know, you really don't have any mass unless you're moving. And again, the only way you can keep an electron moving, spinning isn't going to work. You have to keep pumping it with a voltage. And as soon as you stop pumping it with a voltage, and a voltage is these little bits, you know, it's like gravity. A voltage is gravity, essentially. That's what the argument here is. You're pushing it, you know. And when you stop pushing an electron, it runs out of will to move. It decelerates. It can't hold momentum. It doesn't do the car goes in and it keeps spinning inside the electron. It doesn't have a mechanism to store energy. The atom can store energy because it can store pressure between the electrons, and it's certainly between the electrons and the protons and that whole thing. It can jiggle and move, but the electron can't store energy. That's why they all look the same. It's because put in the same condition, they behave exactly the same. So it's all about their condition. It's all about the environment around the electron dictates what the electron does. Change the environment and all the electrons are the same in the same environment. So it's the environment that dictates the function of an electron, not the personality of the electron. See, I didn't want to really get into the complex argument of why electrons decelerate, but you have to understand that I'm saying they're making this exchange with the universe, right? So when they're moving, they're getting hit. They're letting something go this way, okay, reflection, and they're keeping the bit going this way. Now, the problem is they can't keep it because, see, the rest of the universe is hitting them this way and all these other directions, forces coming in. And when it's doing that, it's making exchanges, just like the exchanges it was making going this way and this way. It's making exchanges this way and this way and this way and this way in all three dimensions. And what happens is when you have more arrows, so to speak, or more fish going this way, then you have fish going this way inside of you. That is, you have more stuff caught in loops going this way and less fish in loops going this way, technically. I mean, obviously not technically. Generally, as I've just pointed out, electrons can't hold it. But the reason why they can't hold it is when they have more in one direction. The problem is that the rest of the universe is hitting them and exchanging. And the universe is going to hit the fish going forward more than it hits the fish going backward because there's more of them. And so it's going to make exchanges with those more often. So it's going to neutralize the imbalance inside the electron. So the electron can't maintain its velocity because the universe is going to filter it out of it. It's going to have its way by majority rules, or whatever you want to call it. The density of the universe is going to overcome the irregularity of the single electron. So it's going to lose that momentum. So atoms can do it because atoms can create an arrangement that keeps pushing in one direction, and it has less exposure from the other directions, And by creating less exposure to change, it doesn't change. So therefore it keeps its momentum. But I'm just saying, yes, the real physics is a little more complicated than what I'm describing. And so I want to be honest to that real description, which is more complicated. But I'm just saying the general one makes it kind of clear that you can sort of understand, that's the difference between acceleration and velocity. Velocity is when you've created the loop and you're keeping it. And acceleration is when you're got it, but you can't necessarily, but you might not necessarily hold it. Acceleration can be temporary, where velocity is in a sense a permanent kind of condition until something takes it away from you directly, an opposite force. So I just wanted to be honest. But as soon as you start saying, yes, there's more details, then yes, it just becomes a much more difficult, because then you have to explain something much more complicated. And I want to emphasize that you don't have to think about it in a complex way, because the general way is still honest. It's just a little bit more complicated than the generality. It's easier to bite it off as a generality first and then move on to the complexity. If you try to do the complexity first, it's the harder way of understanding, I guess is the way to say it. It's like trying to explain what a human is and starting with cellular mitosis and how the chromosomes split and all. That's probably not the best way to explain what it is to be a human, because you're going to get lost in those details and not get the more general picture of, it's a machine. The liver does this, the kidney does that, these organs do this, everything has a function. That's a much more rational way to explain what a human is than to start with, why do the cells split in half and how do the chromosomes break and blah, 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 blah. Well, photons are just a form of gravity, but clearly they're really important because, like magnetism, they affect electrons. And electrons are the surface of atoms. And so clearly, yes, they're just hugely important in terms of creating exchanges of energy. Photons are the gravity that's trapped between electrons. I don't know, how do I say it without it sounding a little bit silly? But clearly, photons are what the energy is stored as. When energy is ever stored, whether it's a battery or the molten center of the earth, what's really being stored is the momentum of photons. I mean, photons in the general term. I mean, it's just such a tricky word. I mean, photons are gravitons. Photons are magnet. It's all one kind of bit, force bit. So I guess I'd have to just rephrase and just say force bit are kind of key. Yes, force bits are the key. Without the force, matter doesn't move. Right. So I mean, they're not stored in the electrons; they're stored between the electrons, and so people have this vision. I had the vision that electrons somehow absorbed the photon and then somehow let the photon loose. And no, the electron never stores it. It just the force gets trapped between the electrons, and that's where it's stored. That's the pressure, and the photon is just the release of that stored energy between the electrons. The repulsion between the electrons is the photon. The higher the pressure between the electrons, the smaller the frequency of the light, because the electrons are closer together. The further away the electrons, the longer the frequency of the light. It's really kind of simple to think about in those terms. The closer the electrons are, the more pressure, the more stuff's bouncing back and forth quicker and quicker. Ping pong ball, ping pong paddle. I mean, that's the simple way to think of it. I bring the paddles closer and closer together, the ball bounces much, much faster. I bring the paddles further apart, the ball goes much slower. And that's the difference between red light and blue light, is pressure. And certainly X-rays mean you've got the electrons really close together. That's why it's harder to make an X-ray, because you have to push the electrons a lot closer together than they want to be. Well, I think the fact that the neutron, when I found out that conventional physics recognizes that neutrons decay into a proton and an electron, that was a huge win for my theory, because it just makes it so obvious why the protons are able to be in a nucleus close together, is that electron is the conduit. It means the protons can get very close to each other because there's an electron between them that's letting all the pressure out. I mean, it was, that was a huge win for me. And electrons have a balanced configuration around the nucleus. Well, the balance is tension, though. Let's understand, the balance isn't happy. The balance is very aggravated. Okay, it's not a fun balance. It's a balance that is tense. Lots of shit hitting and moving, lots of laser beams. Okay, everything's like, you could think of everything being held together by laser beams, of attraction and repulsion. It's just everything's in this tension of these beams. All right, so a little bit of a slowdown. It's probably it's 2 hours. I mean, it's probably time to go. I don't think Dave says much more here. I'll just jump to the middle somewhere, see if he says anything interesting.
And easily move easily away from the cardboard without any hindrance whenever the instrument requires a little amount of charge. The plastic straws and insulator, of course, especially dry wet. The main advantage of the simple instrument compared to the gold leaf is that it can be easily made to be teacher for the student. Also, almost nothing. Okay, good. A normal student will not try to build a gold leaf electroscope. Once in a while, I think the translation, I use Google Translation a lot and have somebody look over it. Or Andre speaks very fluent English. A normal student, probably, the average student probably, like not a normal student. In Portuguese, that's probably what it meant. After all, the instrument should be extremely expensive because it contains gold. The simple fact suggests that the device have been made by specialists being difficult to construct, blah, 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 blah. Electrosource and discovery of cosmic rays. In order to illustrate the importance of electroscope, we mentioned here the discovery of cosmic rays. That's pretty interesting. For a long time, it's known that an electrified electroscope discharges slowly through the air. One of the reasons the air's conductivity is the presence of charged ions in the atmosphere. It is the existence of mobile electrified particles. In 1896, Henri Becquerel.
Well, it's nice that he's reading some of this, but he reads so poorly that I'd almost rather my computer read it or something. So maybe I'll do that. I do have it open somewhere, this C Sky, just because it's kind of simplified versions of some electrical theory, so some of it has value. And I would like to make myself a little homemade electric scope. That would be kind of nice, just to play with. Such. I mean, you can do this stuff. You can make yourself a, you can make yourself a Hindenburg. You can make yourself all kinds of these, devices and blow yourself up and whatnot. So I do plan on doing some of that. Beams, good way to visualize it. Yes, well, on the real level, that's sort of how it is for electrons. They get all or nothing. They don't live in the inverse square law becomes quite irrelevant to some of this stuff that's very close together. It's they're not they're really beaming force at each other. It really is like the ping pong paddles. I mean, it's the thing is either trapped between the paddles or it's not trapped between the paddles. There's no partially trapped. and such. All right, well, I think it's probably enough because yeah, I slow down once the once the questions stop, I stop. But that's just a bad habit maybe. But anyway, Uncle Duke, my butt is tired for some reason. Yeah, chair is uncomfortable. I have to fix it. Yeah, cushion or something. Yeah, maybe I should have just done that. It's a little better. Yeah. Used to have a nice air cushion. It was, it was like for old people. But I'm sort of getting to be an old people. So yeah, I did like it. I think I have the chair maladjusted in some other way too. But anyway, probably not doing my back any good either. Okay, that's just totally irrelevant. All right, let's see if there's any last comments. If not, we will say goodnight. Oh, there's Sparky showed up. I'm sure Sparky's going to be fun. Let's see. What happens when the energy level jumps? But didn't I just explain that? Maybe you're talking about when the electron jumps. But yes, so clearly, depending on how far apart things are, right? You can sort of see like wide rings, the energy wouldn't be very high. And little tight rings, the energy would be much higher because the distance, even though it's the same, you could have like 4 electrons in an orbit like this and 4 electrons out here, and you can sort of understand that the amount of pressure would be higher for the ones in here. So yeah, I would, that's sort of the energy level jump thing. So I think I mean, I haven't drawn it out on paper, but I think superficially they have it backwards, that they think it's jumping from inside to outside is the stronger jump, and it's the exact opposite. It's going from the outside to the inside. That's the stronger jump. So, the higher energy. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. Yes, but clearly the electrons repel each other. So the ones inside ring and the ones in the next ring are obviously alternating in their positions. They're staying in the optimized position to be as far away from all the other electrons as possible and still be as close to the proton as they can get. And so whether you have a hexagon or you have an octagon or you have you're just talking about a shape, a geometry, where all the electrons in that ring have the same balance between them in terms of the pressure and, and distance. And so obviously when an electron jumps from one orbit to another orbit, it's going to jump from one state of being pressurized to another state of pressure, if that's a satisfactory answer. I mean, ping pong paddles, and the paddle jumps to another orbit means these paddles are further apart. It's just that kind of obvious. Pressure is distance. So the closer you bring two electrons, it's kind of like you're automatically increasing the pressure. Automatically. You can't, there's always something between them. Let's just argue. There's always force between them, something. And so the closer you bring them together, you're automatically increasing the pressure. So you had to force them together with more pressure to get them to be together. So that's the energy in equals the energy stored, so to speak. You make the pressure with pressure. That's the conservation argument. It takes pressure to make pressure. Yeah. It's like you could argue it takes voltage to make the pressure in a battery. You have to push stuff in, to increase the pressure inside the battery. Condensing increases pressure, right? Condensing is sort of an interesting word to play with, but you could say consolidating or whatever. But yes, the more you compress the matter, the more pressure you're creating. That's why the sun goes nuclear. It's because there's so much pressure inside the center of the sun. Okay, there's just a tremendous amount of heat. And all of that heat is jiggling the atoms so much that they can't maintain their structure. Can large voltages cause larger objects to levitate? Well, of course they can. I mean, that's already demonstrated by other people, but again, I don't know why that would be. Sorry, again, these questions aren't terribly relevant to my subjects. Like how voltage causes an electron to levitate. This argument that you're levitating an electron, I'm not quite sure that happens. So I'm not going to argue. You think you have an experiment somewhere you levitated an electron. I'm just not too sure you did do that. But whatever. You can believe you have such a device. I'm just not sure you do. Can large voltages cause larger objects to levitate? Yeah, I just don't know. Like how high voltage causes electron to levitate. Yeah. So again, I don't know what that really means. Electrons can be pressurized in two ways. You can put more ping pong balls between the paddles, right? That would obviously create more pressure. Or you can just move the paddles closer together and that'll feel like more ping pong balls. So I'm just saying you have to be a little careful with the word pressure because it can theoretically be caused by adding more ping pong balls. No, I'm curious. Can't you hold an electron in a high voltage field? Well, you don't need a high voltage field. Electrons are moved by any voltage will do in many respects. Electrons are moved by the force, as I've just pointed out. And if you can maintain an imbalance in a direction, the electron will tend to want to move in that direction. Now, the question is how do you get this free electron first? You have to collect it somehow. And yeah, you can position it with voltages, but I'm just saying it's never free because the only way you isolated it was by forcing it to become isolated. You had to use forces to force it into a position. So yes, it's going to be in a position you're forcing it into. I just don't know if I'd call that levitating. It's just the word gets a little complicated because I don't want to get into the facts of gravity, but well, it doesn't matter. Yes, okay, you want to use the word levitate, fine. Use the word levitate. It's okay. It's close enough. High voltages are needed to move electrons fast. So if you want an electron to go very fast, you have to use high voltages. But to overcome, say, gravity, I would argue you don't need a high voltage to do that. Yeah, I'm sorry. I am very reactive, but it's just because there's just so many people that just, stray in all kinds of directions. And, I do tend to want to focus conversation on subjects and, keep it relevant. But anyway, there's nothing wrong with what you're saying. I guess, like I said, the word levitate always it's just not a good word for me. It's just not. It has too much carnival elements to it. But yes, clearly electrons are completely controlled by the force in the environment around them. So you can force them to do almost anything. Well, good. That's a positive thing to say. Thank you for today. It has been really informative. Well, that's nice. Thank you. And it probably is. It's time to go. Yeah. So end on a positive note. That'll be a good idea. Positive conditioning and reinforcement. That'll be good. La 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 la. And such. So anyway, thank you, participants, and fuck you to the rude and obnoxious. And till the next time and such, and so forth and whatnot.